Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Plan B Success. We have Timothy McLaughlin from California today. Now, Tim is an actor, he's a writer, he's also a director. He's done multiple things, and he continues to do that. So we'll hear about his story and how he got into all this and how his journey has been. So first, let's welcome Tim. Tim, welcome aboard.
Hi, thank you very much. Happy to be here, Reggie.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure hosting you. So let's talk about who you are and what you do.
Okay. My name is Timothy McLaughlin. I'm currently a veteran actor. And I say currently because as an actor, anything can change in life. But I started out in Florida. I went to the University of Florida where I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in theater performance and production. And then I spent the next 9 years working at Universal Studios in Orlando, performing in many of their stage productions. And from that point, I was able to compound it and roll it into some more acting work. And that led me out here to California, where my wife and my family joined me, thank goodness. And that's where I've been pursuing my career for the last 22 years.
Awesome. So can you talk about a little bit about your work, some of the things that would ring a bell with the listeners?
Sure. My first big project that I did was an HBO miniseries called From the Earth to the Moon, which was filmed back in 1998, I believe. And it was produced by Tom Hanks. So wonderful project about the space program. And that miniseries actually it spawned from the movie Apollo 13 that Tom Hanks was in. He gained a tremendous passion for the astronaut program. And so he decided to do this HBO miniseries. And it was every episode was directed by many, many, many very well-known directors. I mean, even Sally Field, well-known actress, directed an episode of that. But I was fortunate to work with director Frank Marshall, who is a very, very well-known producer. He produced all of the Indiana Jones movies and many, many, many more. So that was really my very, very first big project, to work with a lot of A-list actors.
When was this?
Yeah. When was this? It was in 1998. And from that point, I was basically working with a lot of commercials, a couple of TV shows. There was a television series called Mortal Kombat, and I was on one of those episodes. And that basically, it snowballed actually to a point where some of the directors were telling me to come out to California to pursue further roles and further movies. So when I did come out here to California, unfortunately, the timing was not as good as I hoped it would be, because the actors' strike happened about 3 months after I got out here to California. So that was a very difficult time. 2000, 2001, right around that time period, was a very difficult period for myself as an actor and for all actors. You know, once that happened, finding work was very hard.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that you started with Universal Studios. Now, did you do anything before you got into stage acting and all that? Or did you have a conventional career? Or is that where you started?
Really where I started. When I first started college, I was actually majoring in oceanography because I loved marine life. And from that point on, things just started to evolve and change. And as a young 18-year-old, student, many students just don't really know what direction they want to go in. They think they do. And then, they get out there in the real world and they start experience life events, and they, evolve and change their passions and find where they really, really want to go. So yeah, it was kind of a 180-degree turn from when I first started in college, but that's the way it happened.
That's awesome. So now, you're someone who's actually found your way to Hollywood and pretty much climbed the ladder, so to speak, from the bottom up. So when you look at stage acting, what you did at Universal versus acting in movies, how would you describe the difference in terms of what you go through as an actor?
Stage acting is very much different than film acting. Obviously, when you go on stage to perform, you're under quite a bit of pressure to perform at that moment. You get one shot, one take, and as an actor, you have to be very, very dialed in to your role and to your lines. That's not to take away anything from film acting. The difference is of course, you get many, many chances in film acting because they do a lot of takes. So they give you opportunities to sharpen it and make it a better scene. Whereas when you're on stage, if you forget a line, you have to work your way around back onto the script. It's, you have to just be on your toes at all times. And it's very much more unpredictable, stage acting. Yeah.
One thing that I do notice, for instance, with someone who's, a lot of people for that matter, go through what you call this whole feeling of, how do I put it? Not being fake, let's put it that way, right? So if someone is trying to get to be, for instance, in the coaching business, they're trying to coach others, there's this feeling of self-worth. And then there's this feeling that I am worthy of being able to teach others, that you go through it as a cycle at some point in time before you're charging money for your services. And
Sure.
they have to break that mold. They have to break it, and they have to tell themselves that what they have to offer is worth, the customer or the client paying money. Now, in terms of acting, and this is a question out of my curiosity. You play so many different roles. You talked about how different takes and sharpening your delivery and all that. And then you as a person have certain values, certain beliefs, certain of your own. Versus you as an actor, when you're in character, it could be totally different. So how would you characterize that? How would you be able to deliver your very best out there on a scene, whether on stage or in a movie, and that the conflict that goes on with your own beliefs and ideals and then that of the character?
Well, first of all, if you're not willing to step out of your comfort zone, you really shouldn't be an actor. And that's one of the biggest things that I could possibly tell anyone who's even thinking about pursuing a career in acting. You have to be able to step out of that comfortable zone. And that could mean playing characters that you would normally, in real life, you may not be, aligned with. I've played many different characters. And the biggest one that I had the most trouble with was for an episode. It was a television pilot for NBC that I actually was in, where I actually had to play a school teacher who was a pedophile. And that had to have been one of the toughest roles for me to play. Now, every actor, I'm sure, has their breaking point, or that has their line that they won't cross. A very well-known actor by the name of Neil McDonough. So he is a very, very committed Catholic, and he refuses to do any sex scenes because of his marriage to his wife and his commitment to his wife. So, and it's really funny because he likes to play a lot of bad guy roles. Those are the roles that he ends up getting. So while he could play a bad guy role, there's always a line, a moral line that you have as an actor that you will not cross. And that's a choice that each individual actor has to make. Each person in life has to make. You have to understand, there's going to be opportunities that may come along that may test your moral compass. And you have to be able to know when to say no, and it could be a sacrifice financially, but are you willing to sacrifice financially, or are you willing to sacrifice morally? Those are the differences that you have to find, the balance within. So,
in order to make it truly believable, obviously you got to get under the skin of the character, and you got to be able to portray that you're actually living it. I'm sure that kind of takes a toll on an actor as a person with every single role that you play. How do you deal with something like that?
I enjoy meditation, as a human being, to sort of find the balance. And as an actor, there are many different methods to studying to achieve the role and the character that you're working on. I'm a proponent of Meisner technique, which touches on emotions, life experiences. There are some actors that test or that like to go the way of method acting. Okay. They like to immerse themselves into that character on and off the set. Once I leave the set as an actor myself, I leave the character there. Okay. It's sort of like these kids nowadays, you know, when you're playing in kindergarten and you're playing with your toys, and at the end of the day in preschool, you have to put your toys away before you go home. And then tomorrow morning you come back and there's your toys again to play with. Well, that's kind of the way I approach it as an actor. When I leave the set, I leave my toys there. I leave my character there. I say goodbye to them. I tell them I'll see you in the morning. And then there's a transition that I make where I walk away from that character at the end of the day. It's not to say I'm not thinking about him, but I walk away from the character. And then the next day you get on set, and it's like stepping across this line into this imaginary world. And now you get to play with those toys. And those toys are the tools you have inside of you, your emotions, what you're bringing to the character. So it's not an easy task. A lot of actors have found themselves struggling outside of the soundstage or outside of working on a film. When they finish filming, they have trouble leaving that role or that character there on set. And especially if they're in a relationship, a marriage, if they have family, that character can impact the behavior with their family, you know, off the set. So.
Absolutely. Now, you know, you've also been a writer and a director. Can you talk about some of those works that you have actually worked on?
Yeah, there's a couple of projects. Mostly the directing and producing have been small, short films. I'm an actor first, but I always like to keep being creative. And so when, for example, when I'm not working as an actor, I might be home working on a writing project. Like right now I do. I have 2 projects that I'm trying to develop and write. And it just keeps the creative juices flowing when you're not on set as an actor. And a couple of years back, I had the opportunity to co-write and co-direct and co-produce a couple of short films for the LA 48-Hour Film Festival, which was a very interesting and fun experience. So we got to, you know, try our hands in other parts of our craft. And it was a very good experience. I actually produced and wrote a short film called Got Your Back, which was entered into the 48-Hour Film Festival a few years ago. And it's just another way to keep myself creative, keep myself working, and keep my head and my mind focused on, you know, my goals.
And what do you enjoy more, acting, writing, or directing?
Acting. Absolutely acting. Love acting. When you're a director or a producer, you have to look out for everybody. You have to worry about the entire cast and the entire crew. Your focus is just everywhere. And it's a much more difficult task. It's a much more difficult job. As an actor, you just worry about you. You worry about your character. You worry about what you're bringing to the table. And then you connect it with the other actors that you're performing and you collaborate. But you don't have to worry about anybody else. So
when it comes to writing, what's your process? You know, how do you go through writing something? You know, these are stories, right? We're talking about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And it could be anything from a dream that I have where I wake up and I say, wow, what a crazy dream I just have or had. And you sit there and you start manifesting and thinking about the scene of the dream or the thought you might have had during the day. And then it just starts growing. I mean, it's like a beautiful garden, you know, this little green stem pops up out of the ground and you start building it and nurturing it. And it just, all I can say is that I find myself daydreaming a lot when I think about a script or a story. And so what happens is I give names to the people that are in my visions or in my daydreams. And I give names to these people. And then when you give names to them, you have to give a history to them. What kind of a life did they have? How did they grow up? And then all of a sudden, the background story starts to form. And once the background story starts to form, then you turn around and you can start creating scenes, moments in the story. And once you create the moments in the stories, then you create the conflicts. So again, it starts out with just this one seed, big seed, and it just flourishes from that point. And sometimes it just instantly comes to an end and stops, and you go, okay, well, that story's not going to go any further. And then you sort of put it into the closet or into the drawer for a while, and something else comes into your mind. So I could have like 2 or 3 different thoughts, ideas, and potential projects running at the same time. But, sometimes you just have to put them away for a while. You have to step away from them so you can think more clearly as you start to develop.
So when you look at a writer who's also a director versus directing somebody else's writing or somebody else's script, I feel that if it's your own idea, you end up being a more insightful kind of a director. Is that true or not?
Hard to say. There's different kinds of directors. There are directors that have their own vision and they want it done that way, and they're very narrow-minded about it. And then there's directors who have a vision, and then they allow the actors to collaborate, and they allow even sometimes director of DPs, who are the director of photography, the cinematographers. They all collaborate on different lighting or different shots, and you have the actors collaborating on a storyline, and you have the cinematographer and sound and lighting collaborating on atmosphere. So as a director, you have a vision, but the really, really good directors are the ones that allow their actors and their crew to collaborate with them and to give them ideas. Because if you're thinking one way, and your cinematographer or your lighting design person says, hey, listen, what do you think about shooting it this way or filming it this way? And it might be a way the director never even thought about. So the really good directors allow collaboration with everyone. The ones that are a little bit more narrow-minded, it's not to say they can't create a really great film. It's just that I think it serves them no purpose to not allow other people and other creative minds to collaborate.
One thing that I notice, and you tell me how far this is true, but having come from India, I've seen a lot of the film world of the East. Bollywood is what they call
the
it.
Bollywood, yeah.
So when I look at Hollywood here versus draw comparisons with Bollywood, and I'm talking about, let's talk about the 80s and the 90s, right? That was the time in India or in Bollywood where the name of the actor sold. Yeah, it was about how famous was the actor, how well known were they, and then you build a story and you cast them. Doesn't matter what the story is, the movie would still run because so and so is the hero, or of the movie, which I found was very different on in Hollywood, where it's not always about the hero. It's more about who fits the bill for what kind of a role, and that's what gives them that the name that they gather. And then over time, now what I see, and I think I see quite a bit of it in Bollywood, is it's no longer about who's that famous hero that you're casting. It's about the script, the story, the appeal that it has to people, and that's what takes off. That's what carries off. You could be casting absolutely newbies, but if the story has strength, it still can do really well. And that's the change that I've seen in the 2000s and the 2010s and such. What do you think of that?
Well, actually, there's some validity to what you're saying, but really, for the most part, that I found in Hollywood, that if a movie is to be successful financially, it needs a star name attached to it. They won't cast a movie of nobodies unless there is a big name attached to it, because you have to get people into the seats, into the theater. You have to draw interest. And sometimes a script alone is not going to get them in there. There was a movie that was done, it was back in 2009, I think it was, the third installment of the Transporter franchise, which starred Jason Statham. And one of the actresses, the star in it, her name was Natalia Rudakova, I believe her name was. And she had no acting experience whatsoever. Zero. She actually immigrated from Russia over to the United States, and she was working in New York City as a hairdresser and had never done a bit of acting in her life. And the writer of Transporter 3 saw her crossing a street one day and approached her and said, I want to sign you up for acting lessons, and I want you to star in my movie. And just like that, she was a star in a mainstream film opposite of an A-list actor. So while those instances are very, very rare, they do happen. Today, I think a lot of the people that are cast in movies are Instagram influencers or Facebook influencers or Twitter influencers because they have hundreds of thousands of followers. And as a director or as a producer, you want to fill the seats in the movie theater. You want people paying those tickets. And if someone has 1 million followers on Instagram or on Facebook or Twitter, they know that if they put that actress or actor in that film, that those 1 million followers, there's a good chance they'll want to come in and watch the movie. And it's, in my own personal opinion, I think it's diluting the acting industry. It's giving a lot of actors and actresses, new ones, great opportunities, but I think it's going to be a difficult situation where you're having a clash of really good trained professional veteran actors and newbies who are coming in who don't have that training, who don't have that experience. And so what you're taking is you're turning it into a popularity contest.
Right.
And a lot of the actors today, I mean, a lot of big veteran actors, the A-list actors, they've spent years working their way up the ranks.
Right.
And now all of a sudden they're up the ladder, and then, an Instagram influencer comes in and all of a sudden they're up here. And there's no validation for them to have worked their way up so easy. They're skyrocketing above everybody very fast without, I don't want to say paying their dues, because there are people like that they become instantly famous. I think you're seeing a blend of both of those types of films happening, where you still need an A-list actor to drive a film. There's just, otherwise it's going to fail miserably, or it may do well at the box office, but it may not do well from a standpoint of content and the word that I'm looking for, meaningfulness. Okay. The films they're putting out right now are cookie cutters. I mean, Marvel, they're all based on special effects, and the shock value of the movie as they're lacking in substance. That's the word I was thinking.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think about, what has transpired over the last year, right? So with the pandemic coming in and the theaters being shut down, there's been a lot of digital content and then OTT platforms kind of coming up, and kind of revalidation of the Netflix kind of models. And now you have all these, like Disney and then Peacock and all of these, Apple TV, all of them having their own channels, plus their investments into creating content. Do you think that kind of opens up opportunity? Obviously, it does open up opportunities for a lot more people, for a lot more content, a lot more writers, actors, directors, and all of that stuff. But the changing dynamics of the industry in terms of going into the theaters, watching movies there versus now having to release a movie on a digital platform and then deciding whether it's a blockbuster or not based on how it does on these platforms. Yeah. What are your thoughts of that?
Yeah, I think that we're seeing a genuine shift in content and where it's being viewed. And you have your audience that just loves going to the theater. They see it as an experience. And you see a lot of new people, and when I say millennials, I don't like to use those terms, but you see the younger generation coming up, and they live on their computers or in their phones. So it's more difficult to get them into the theaters. So you have to sit there as a producer or a company, and you have to sit there and say, okay, well, if they're not going to come to me, I'm going to go to them. So a lot of these platforms like Netflix and YouTube and Hulu and whatnot, they're producing their own content and they're throwing it out there. And what's happening is they're throwing a lot of content out there. And today's younger generation, their attention span has shortened quite a bit with TikTok and all of these other little video platforms, YouTube. People can make their own projects, and most of them only last a number of minutes. You know, with TikTok, it's seconds, but with other platforms, it's just a matter of minutes. So in essence, everybody's doing their own little short films. And then when you go up to the next level and you have the Netflix series and you have, like you said, Paramount puts stuff together, Amazon, all of these other platforms. And what happens is they give them an entire season of content. Like for example, the show Cobra Kai from Netflix, which has been very popular, especially for my generation that grew up with the Karate Kid. But they release the entire season and people binge watch it in a day or 2 days. And then when they're finished, they want more. Mm-hmm. So I think what's going to happen is, or what is happening is that a lot of these shows that are being produced and they're releasing and dropping them all at once, it's making the audience frustrated because they want more. And it takes time to film and put these projects through post-production and editing and everything. So all of this instant gratification is sort of getting the audience used to having things when they want. And I think that could come back to hurt the industry a little bit, because when you sacrifice time, meaning you take the time to film it properly, edit it properly, and then get it out there. If you're sacrificing that time and you're shortening it, you're going to shorten quality. You're going to lower the quality of the project. And before you know it, there's going to be just all kinds of nonsensical films and television series out there. And I think it's going to make the audience bored after a while. They're not going to be interested.
You know, I believe that, the whole notion of cinema is pretty fascinating from the standpoint that there's the creative side of it, and then there's the business or the commerce side of it. And you talked about, the need for a movie to be produced, the big bucks that are invested, and the need for it to reap a return. And that pressure is always there, whether you're an actor, whether you're a writer, whether you're a director. And there's a certain level of discipline that you need to have within your craft in order to be able to meet timelines, deadlines, and all of that. At the same time, on the creative side, you got to be really creative. You got to be, innovative, out of the box, all of that for all of these elements. That's a tough balance. The pressure of delivery, the pressure and discipline of the returns, plus trying to be creative. Because for creativity, it's always said that you need to have the freedom, the time on your hands in order to produce your most potent product. How does that work? How does the coming together of creativity and the commercial elements work?
Very rarely. Very rarely do they come together the right way. Look, you've got at the very top of the cinematic food chain, as I call it, you have your companies. You have Warner Brothers and Universal, and you have these big movie making companies, and they just care about making money. That's the bottom line. As long as they're in the black and they're making their money and profits, they're really not too concerned about putting out. It's not their responsibility. Let me put it that way. It's not their responsibility to put out incredibly moving films, incredibly, fantastic. They put out movies that are going to make money. Right. And that is why Warner Brothers has been putting out all the DC comic movies, the Batmans and the Supermans, and you have the Harry Potter movies and et cetera. And then you have Marvel, which is putting out all of their stuff. And so right now it's literally just what I call a money generating business in that aspect. Now, the lower you go down the totem pole, that's where the creativity starts to come in, because you have the big companies and they hire the producers and the producers are in charge of keeping the budget in line, making sure that everybody's happy and satisfied, basically balancing between the creativity and between the stockholders, so to speak. And then below the producers, you have the directors. Now, the directors are the creative ones. The directors are also, you have the directors, and then behind them are the producers. When it comes to, if I can paint this picture for you, you're sitting on a set, a movie set, and you have the director in his director chair. Behind the director are producers sitting in their producer chairs. And they sit there and just basically lean over into the director's ear and say, we're going over budget here. We have to pick things up. We have to keep things moving along. They're in charge of that. They're in charge of basically keeping everything on the railroad, on the tracks. The directors, they can go off the tracks. The director is a very creative individual. He wants to put forth an artistic product.
Right.
The producers want to make sure it gets done in time, under budget, and everything runs smoothly. There's no issues that come up, mostly financial issues.
Mm-hmm.
So it does. It's the further down you go, that's where you get more creative. So the biggest job is the job of the producer, because he literally is the go-between between the creative and the financial.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, Tim, what's in store for you for the future, 2021? Any big plans?
Oh, gosh, just lots of goals right now. The pandemic really, really hurt a lot of the industry. And that's from top to bottom. All the movies that were supposed to come out this whole year, completely, like you said, they got thrown over to streaming platforms, or they got shelved until this year. There's several movies I know that I've had some friends work on. The new Top Gun movie with Tom Cruise was supposed to be out in theaters this past year, and they're gonna release it next summer, I think. And then the new Ghostbusters installment was supposed to come out this summer, and that got shelved and postponed until this year as well. And I'm sure there's many, many others. But for myself, I have 2 short films that are in post-production right now. One is called Fleeced, and that one is pretty much finished, and we're going to be hopefully putting it into the film festivals this year. So that, I'm looking forward to that. It's a nice little short film, comedy. And then there's another one that's in post-production that's kind of sort of hitting a snag right now that I'm trying to work through. And it's not a short film, but it's not a feature film. It's kind of in between. It's a 45-minute film, and it stars myself and an Emmy Award-winning actor. But right now it's running into legal issues, which happens quite often, where you have a director or a writer or a producer who has the rights to the film, and then they want to turn around and do something different. And then the director there's lots of conflict. And sometimes that can be drawn out for years before you actually see the film. And then this one project called Warrior of 8 Flags, which I was attached to this past summer, has been postponed because of the pandemic. And now they're doing a rewrite of the script. So as soon as that rewrite gets finished, then we'll probably have more to tell as far as where and when that one's going to be filmed. But my goals this year, I want to do Westerns. I want to do Western films. I've never done a Western, which is the reason why I grew my beard. I didn't have this before. If you go onto my IMDb page, you'll see a huge spectrum of characters that I've played in the past, and not one of them has been this extreme as far as my beard. I'm gravitating towards like the TV series Yellowstone. Fantastic series. I love that. Would love to be on that series. And so I'm putting all of my goals and all of my energy towards Westerns and maybe even some period pieces. I'd like to get back into doing some period pieces. So, it's all up to the theater gods, so to speak, and where it all falls. The pandemic also hurt a lot of actors because they lost their representation. Their agencies. Some of the agencies, the smaller ones, had to close. Some of the larger ones actually had to sort of let a lot of their talent go to sort of trim their roster down. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Awesome. My goals this year is to get a really good theatrical agent. I have a good commercial and modeling agent, so I'm very happy with them. And then keep working hard towards making those goals a reality this year. So
Awesome. Well, Tim, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been great. A lot of people have these questions about theater and film in general, and I think we touched on quite a few topics. And your insights have been great. I'm sure a lot of people will find value, and the best way to find you would be on the IMDb page.
That you can see all of my latest projects. If you'd like to see some of my current photos and things, I do post on Instagram, and some of those I post some professional pictures, and I also post some more personal pictures with family or vacation spots or things like that. So you can find me on Instagram at the Timothy Mac, and IMDb is imdb.me/Timothy McLaughlin, and you can find all other links within those two sites if you want to sort of poke around and find a little bit more about me. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, happy to follow you back. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Tim. Thanks for sharing everything, and we wish you the very best as you move forward.
Thank you very much, Majid. And it was great talking to you.
Same here.
All right. Take care.